welcome to another my NTND marriage video. We almost split up. Well, we have split up a couple of times, but this time it was my idea. When I had lived with him for the 3 years, and that was when it was the first time that I'd sort of really gotten to see what he was like, and saw that he was incredibly cold and distant and watched exorbitant amounts of TV. It was the only thing that he did. Aside from watching sport, he went out and played sport. So I'd had 3 years of that, and I was quite depressed by midway through and didn't have family support and friends around me and things like this. He was my only support there. I did make some acquaintances and things, mostly through him, but overall there was nobody to do anything with, nothing to do sort of thing, very kind of boring, dull lifestyle, the nearest city being well over an hour's drive away, no public transport. I mean, we're in the back of beyond. So yeah, it was pretty sort of hard. I did do a lot of bushwalking and hiking and things, but you know, it was lonely. It was really lonely. It was like having a boyfriend, but being single still, a very sort of unusual state. And so I did get to a point where I wanted to leave. I wanted to split up. This wasn't the relationship for me. So I've been there for 3 years and I leave. I go back home. And we had that opportunity. It was right then when I could have said, look, I'm not doing this with you. You're not the man that I thought you were. You're too cold and too distant and too removed from the relationship. We're not talking about us. We're not talking about much of anything. We're not talking about sex. We're not having a really good sex life. We're not having much of anything. We were doing nice things like going to restaurants and the odd movie, and like we did go hiking together on occasion, and once or twice we took some friends with us and sort of had a picnic out in the middle of nowhere and things like this. So it was not perpetually awful and empty if it was only that easy. But it was still dark. So I leave and we're talking on the phone, and I'm sort of discussing how, you know, this relationship isn't for me. And he's umming and ahhing whether or not he wants to continue as well, because coming to stay with me means quitting his lucrative job and coming to where I am and getting a non-lucrative job. So he didn't really want to either. And it was after I'd left there and gone home that I'd had that interaction with the narcissistic friend that I've made a previous video about. And she had said to me that I'm lucky to have him. And this is where the ego comes in, hence the title of the video. I didn't want her to be proven right. It's kind of loony in a sense. If we had split up and he was too good for me, then that would have meant in her eyes that I was not good enough for him, if you follow my drift. I mean, it's all psychology. It's not completely logical, I get that. And so I didn't want to then lose him and have her find out through the grapevine that we had split up, and then for her to be gloating and laughing and whatever over the fact that I'd let this really good guy go. And she did have a point, because he had a lot of good points, even though he was cold and distant, and like the relationship itself, us coming together, wasn't really gelling. But outside of that, he was a really decent guy, and this was the biggest dilemma of it, the hardest part about making a decision. Do I stay with this guy or not? And at this point, he hadn't reached his worst yet. He wasn't doing his critiquing and his major yelling or anything like this. It was just kind of very cold and distant and not quite gelling. The communication was lacking. The emotional connection was lacking. But I'd met a number of guys before him, and they weren't as warm and kind and as caring. So let's discuss that for a moment, right? Prior to him, I had this really cool NT boyfriend, and we clicked. We got along so well, so famously. We were both really clever, really witty, really spunky, a lot of fun. Had some awesome conversations. I mean, we'd stay up all night talking. We'd do the whole breakfast in bed thing, the pillow talk, the whole shebang. I mean, he was the bee's knees, as they say. But he was on a working visa and he had to leave. And then in between him leaving, that relationship ending, and before I met my ND partner, I'd gone on numerous dates and things with guys, and they were all so, really usury, you know, like a lot of them just wanted sex, and if you didn't say yes to it, which, you know, is everybody's choice, they didn't really want a bar of you. They just didn't want to commit. They were not in it for a commitment. I met another guy who was even more cold and more distant. He would say he was going to attend like a gathering that I'd be having and then just not show up and things like this. So I wasn't having a lot of luck with guys after my neurotypical boyfriend left. So when I met my current husband, he wasn't like the guys that I'd been dating. We spent a weekend together, you know. We pushed each other in a trolley and took photos and pushed each other on swings and gave each other piggybacks. And we had an actual nice weekend. And it was a nice change from the kind of duds that I'd been meeting. So that's just an interjection there, just to give you a bit of an example as to what was an added attraction to me choosing my neurodiverse husband. And so when it came to eventually having to choose between ending the relationship with him after 3 years, and it was extra than that. We had courted for a year, he had lived with me for about a half a year, and then we'd been separated for a little while, and then I'd lived with him for 3 years. So all up, we're talking about 5 odd years together by this stage. And that's a lot of time to invest in a person. And that was also a factor. You give so much of yourself to this person that it feels hard to just let that go. So we had a situation where he was not as dud as other guys I'd been dating. I didn't want my narcissistic friend to be proven right that he was too good for me. And 3, he wasn't that bad then, and we still had decent, good moments. Yes, we couldn't agree on anything, and we had lots of arguments about me not following his recommendations and things. But I guess because we lived in his place as well, he was less stressed there, less volatile. It wasn't actually until he moved in with me after we'd separated for a little while, and then we had children, that he really became volatile. So yeah, it's kind of goofy because I had really, well, there was a big part of me that had wanted to end it, that was planning on leaving him at those 3 years, was planning on returning to my hometown and telling him this isn't working for me. And then I have that interaction with that narcissist friend, and I just couldn't bring myself to end it and have her know that I'd lost this really cool man. And I could have kicked myself afterwards when things got really bad. I just thought, what an idiot, you had this perfect opportunity. He's over in his hometown, you're over in your hometown. This is the perfect time to say, look, you stay there, don't come. And then I go off and start dating again, you know. Not that that prospect appealed to me, I have to admit. Dating just doesn't seem that fun. I don't know if you're dating and you agree, but to me dating is just complicated. Guys just seem only obsessed with sex. It's almost like it's all that they think about. You get on Tinder, you know, and the first thing they're asking you is something sexual, and you're like, next. Yeah, ick. Anyway, when I think about it now though, considering that we are still together, we're getting along better, the critiquing has stopped, he's suddenly randomly finding me funny, hey, this is good. I don't feel as bad as I did for the great many years that I felt really bad, like kicking myself in the head thinking, why didn't you just kick him to the curb when you had that chance, you know? You were separated. He didn't even have to move over with you. You were free, you know? But now I just don't quite feel that way. I feel kind of, this might sound really unusual, but I feel kind of blessed to a degree that we've managed to last this long and that we did stick it out and that we are going strong. And that narcissistic friend of mine kept having failed relationship after failed relationship. And I would hazard a guess it's because she's hard work. Her side of the story is, of course, it's them. They're the ones at fault. But you and I know she's hard work. Anyway, so I feel kind of cool in a sense that we didn't split up and we have made it work. And we've been dedicated to each other and we're working hard at keeping the relationship going, trying as best we can to meet each other's needs within the parameters that we have to work with. So anyway, over to you. Did you have opportunities to split up and what stopped you? Were you also in the same boat as I was where it's not always bad, so it's really hard to just say, I want out? I mean, some people have talked about when they've gone to leave their partner, they love bomb you and then make you want to stay. He didn't quite do that, though we did have more phone conversations after I'd left and we had that sort of split up. I think we were split up for about 6 months. He did start talking about sex on the phone then and talking about the improvements he was going to make and things. And he didn't follow through when he did come. He didn't follow through. So is that love bombing? I feel like in his case, he wanted to be better and put in an effort and things. But when it comes down to it, he doesn't have the commitment. Not in that sense anyway. He is committed to trying to keep the relationship together and working on the relationship. But he'll often say to me, let's do X, Y, Z, and then he'll never do it. He just doesn't set the time aside or something. Anyway, I got sidetracked as usual. So yeah, if you're like me and it wasn't always crappy, that makes it hard. Did you have others out there, family and friends and things, that influenced your opinion to stay? Let me know, comment below, would love to hear from you, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, really do appreciate it.